Welcome, everyone. I'm Pat Harris, Chair of the Roosevelt Board of Trustees and a proud alumna of our university. It's exciting to be here on one of Roosevelt University's most historic days. On this day, 75 years ago, former Lady Eleanor Roosevelt dedicated the university to the enlightenment of the human spirit in a moving speech at the Stevens Hotel down the street from our Chicago campus. At the end of this hour, you will have the privilege of hearing Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, granddaughter of Eleanor, reenact her dedication address via video. Every university president since that historic day has served to honor our mission and has been committed to education for democracy, active citizenship, and social justice. Today, we are gathered to celebrate Roosevelt's lasting legacy. We will take a look at Roosevelt University through the lens of current President Ali Malekzadeh and former presidents Chuck Middleton and Ted Gross. Together, they will share their experiences leading this unique institution. With that, I would like to welcome a special guest and friend of Roosevelt University, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Congratulations, Roosevelt. 75 years of excellence. I want to say my thanks to you, the faculty and staff, members, and you, Dr. Ali, for being such a great and role model of what an educator administrator should be. You represent social justice. Inclusion is not new to you. You founded 75 years ago faculty and students for marching the mission of all people. Your prize process was Harold Washington, who wanted to become such a founder of the new Chicago and the new American political order. Thank you, congratulations, and God bless you. Whatever I can do, always count on me. Love you, Roosevelt. Happy 75.
So we want to send a special thank you to Reverend Jackson for his inspirational message. Now I'd like to introduce Lynn Weiner, Professor Emerita of History, who will be moderating the President's panel discussion. So Lynn, it's great seeing you, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Pat. It's my pleasure, and I'm deeply honored to be here today with all of you to celebrate Roosevelt University's 75th anniversary, along with the presidents who have guided us for the past 32 years. Roosevelt has a remarkable history. 75 years ago, Edward Sparling, the president of the Central YMCA College of Chicago, was ordered by his board of directors to create an admissions quota to limit the number of Black, Jewish, and Japanese students. Although such admission quotas were common at the time, he refused, saying, "We don't count that way." Instead, he resigned and was followed by a mass walkout of faculty, staff, and students. It was a unique moment in American higher education. Sparling became the first president of Roosevelt College, named for the late Franklin Roosevelt. On November 16, 1945, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt proudly dedicated the new college to the enlightenment of the human spirit. One of the many headlines across the country about this new college said, "Roosevelt is a model of educational democracy." Edward Sparling was president until 1963, followed by a short-term president, Robert Pitchell, who was replaced in 1965 by Rolf Weil, who had been a founding faculty member in the College of Business and later its dean. He served until 1988. And that brings us to today. I'd like to welcome the three men whose leadership has preserved and strengthened Roosevelt's legacy. On a personal note, I had the great privilege and pleasure of working closely with each of them during my many years at Roosevelt, and I could see up close both the challenges and the rewards of the presidency. Let me introduce you to our panel. Dr. Theodore Gross, our fourth president, served for 14 years from 1988 to 2012. 2002. A scholar of American literature, an author, and a novelist, Ted had earlier served as an administrator at the City College of New York, Pennsylvania State University, and the State University of New York at Purchase. Our fifth president, historian Charles Middleton, is a fellow of Britain's Royal Historical Society and led Roosevelt from 2002 to 2015. He previously held administrative posts at the University System of Maryland, Bowling Green State University, and the University of Colorado at Boulder. He has served on numerous boards, including the American Council of Education, and chaired the Board of Trustees of the City Colleges of Chicago. And our current and sixth president is Dr. Ali Malekzadeh, who has led the university since 2015. Before arriving at Roosevelt, he held administrative posts at Kansas State University, St. Cloud State University, and Xavier in Cincinnati. He is an author, a black belt, and has a PhD in business administration and strategic management. So now let's begin. And here's our first question, and I'll ask President Gross. Why did you choose to accept the presidency at Roosevelt? What was your vision?
Well, in 1988, when I came to Roosevelt, I had spent all my career practically in public education, and the notion of coming to a university that was private, in which one could carve out one's own destiny, was particularly attractive. And so that was one of the reasons why I was drawn to it. I was also drawn to it because of Chicago. New York was so huge that there was a distance between the leaders and the people. And in Chicago, it seemed that the business community, the public leaders community, was very much closer to education and to caring about education. Of course, the real reason that I came to Roosevelt, I wanted to be a president, for one thing. It was a culmination of a whole career, but also the commitment to social justice. My family grew up in Brooklyn in the 1930s and 40s, and Franklin Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt were on our walls, and they were gods to us, and they represented everything we wanted to believe in. And so coming to a university named after Franklin Delano Roosevelt was particularly compelling. The social justice, the diversity of all peoples, a multi-ethnic element in the university. So that was the reason why I came. And in terms of the vision that I think I brought to the university, I should mention before I go on that the courage of the faculty and President Sparling, was really so extraordinary, particularly the episode with the swimming pool when minorities were not allowed to use it, and they broke away from the YMCA, came to Roosevelt University. Anyone would have to be inspired by that kind of courage in 1945, when many universities, as you said before, were discriminatory. So my vision that I brought to the university when I came, and I took a look at all the issues and the problems and the challenges and the possibilities, was to see this university as a metropolitan university. That compelled me. I looked across the world and I saw cities becoming metropolises. And the distinction between suburbs and city were not that great. So Roosevelt had already established an Albert A. Robin campus in Arlington Heights. It was in a school building, School District 214 in Arlington Heights. We set about creating a building, a full-time facility in Schaumburg when it became available as a consequence of Unical leaving there. So the vision was a metropolitan university, and with all the other attributes, obviously, of raising money and trying to lift the university up. The other part, I should say that was one dominant element, and I'll come back to that, having a metropolitan university and acquiring a second campus that was a full college campus as part of a university complex. I had seen it work at Penn State. I had seen it at State University of New York. And I thought that this could certainly happen in Chicago. We were also 2 blocks away from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And it seemed to me, and we had acquired the Chicago Symphony, the Chicago Conservatory of Music. So together with my good friend and Dean Earl Shube, we built a College of Performing Arts. And we brought in people from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. These were the greatest artists, in the world, and they came on as adjuncts and were extraordinarily helpful. So that those 2 elements were terribly important. To implement that vision, I needed to do several things, and I'll come back to them later after your other questions. For one, I had to build a board of trustees. I had to find the best and the brightest in Chicago to be on that board of trustees to implement my vision. Then I had to build an administrative team to implement that mission. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said that an institution is the long shadow of a single person. The long shadow of a single person. It is, but that single person has to surround himself with top-rate talent. And I was blessed. I was really, really blessed. Bob Graham came from Penn State with me, and together with John Allison, who came down from Minneapolis and Minnesota, a banker, the most trusted man in the university. Bob and John Allison helped me to implement that vision. So the team that I put together was one in which Bob Graham, the provost, who I had worked with in Penn State, and John Allison basically ran the university together with the deans. And one of the deans was, one of the associate deans at that time was one Lynn Weiner, who was extraordinarily helpful in the largest college in the university. And then, of course, I mentioned Earl Shube, who was my good friend and made the College of Performing Arts really stunning. And I could go across the board in terms of the academic deans like Laura Evans, who was extremely helpful in building the continuing education college. So, and then finally, I can't forget some of the staff that worked with me too, and freed me up to fundraise, to create and implement a $50 million capital campaign. I saw my task as going out to build a board, to raise money, and to build enrollments. And I was going to be the external face of this university as much as I possibly could be. The one person I turned to, because I knew immediately that this was an enrollment-driven university. The funds were primarily coming in from students, 5,500 students when I started in 1988. When I left, it was 7,500. So we increased the enrollments. And the one person who made that really happen was my good friend, my blessed Mary Henry. I sat in the university center with her when I asked her to be the vice president for enrollment management. And I told her the problems and so forth. And she said, I will raise your enrollments by 10% within the next 3 years. And God bless her, she did. And I turned that whole project of enrollment manager over to her. And I couldn't have asked for a better person in the entire state of Illinois. So I owe all of these people tremendous gratitude. I couldn't have done it by myself at all. And these were people who really managed the university, improved it, and then I was able to go out and tell the story to the larger community. So that's basically the vision that I had and my attempt to implement it. By the time I finished, we had a $75 million endowment. We had a 7,500 student enrollment, and the university was on much greater, much sounder economic footing. Because when I came in 1980, one of the great deterrents, one of the issues that I had, challenges that I had, was that the endowment was $3 million. Now you imagine going into a university with a $3 million endowment. That's difficult to build from. And to go to a university that's 5,500 students and not really increasing enrollment. But we did both that. We increased. So that I felt very satisfied when I left the presidency in 2002 that the university was in a much stronger position.
Thank you, Ted. Chuck, again, why did you choose to accept the presidency and what was your vision?
Thank you, Lynn. I'll be pretty brief on this one. I have a lot more to say about some of the other issues later on, but like Ted, it was actually the mission and values. But what was compelling for me was that during the interview process, I expected that to be more superficial than it was. And the more I came back to campus, and I was on campus 4 times during the interviewing process over the course of 2 or 3 months, I saw that these values were deeply and widely held by the faculty and the staff and the students, and everybody was really dedicated and committed to implementing these values, not only on the campus and in the immediate surrounding area, but also as widely as possible in the course of their career and their student studies at Roosevelt. And that really impressed me. And I said, I want to be part of that. I came to the university because of what was going on, and I thought, wow, if I can be part of a university that is driven by a mission that I personally believe in, then I will have found the nirvana job. So when I came here, then I actually then thought my goal, my responsibility as president would be to sustain and, where possible, to expand the mission and the way the mission was expressed, and how it was implemented externally as well as internally. And for me, that meant to build upon what Ted had done, the concept of a metropolitan university, and really to take Roosevelt nationally, to give us the kind of visibility and impact on the national higher education stage and through that many other places, so that we would become as a national treasure, as it were, equivalent to the Chicago treasure that we already were. Of course, we would sustain that base, but I looked to a time when we had visibility and people knew of us all across the country. That was my broad strategic goal, and I'll leave it to others to determine how well we succeeded in accomplishing it.
Thank you. Ali.
Yeah, very much like Ted and Chuck, I was attracted to the mission of the university. And, during the interview process, I heard about social justice. And having been in a Catholic school, I said, everybody talks about social justice, but Catholics, and especially Catholic universities, make a living out of social justice. So what is it different in social justice at Roosevelt that everybody talks about? Why is that unique? But the more I learned about how the faculty, the staff, and especially the students believed in the mission of the university, it dawned on me that the mission of our university is very, very different. That is embedded in the fabric of the university. And of course, as you look back, and Lynn, as you reminded everyone of that legacy, then it became much more clear of how important this position is. And I saw my charge as making sure the university is academically stronger, because that's what we do every day in any university, and then financially stronger, and as Chuck and Ted have mentioned, so that we have a foundation to make sure we can build on that. Now, today, if we were going to buy a campus such as Schaumburg, we couldn't do it. So thanks for Ted for that vision. Today, if we wanted to build a magnificent building such as the Wabash building, we couldn't do it. So thanks for the vision that Chuck brought and the diligence to make sure we get it done. I'm in the buildings all the time. Well, have been, not recently, but previously. And invariably, every guest, every student, every parent that walks into our facilities just raves about how beautiful it is and how gorgeous it is. And especially parents say, maybe we send Junior to work. And honey, you and I move into the beautiful residence halls and, go take a literature class, a dance class, a music class, go to the gym, and then go to the cafeteria and get fresh food and all that good stuff. So I think what we have today is absolutely unique. It is built on the back of the vision that everybody is talking about, presidents, faculty, staff, and all the amazing students that we've had. And really, all we want to do going forward is to make sure that academically stronger and financially stronger is the university that we leave behind.
Great, thank you. It is interesting to see how as Ted suggested, it builds, administration by administration. Our second question is this: what anticipated and unanticipated internal and external challenges did you face when you became president? And how did these affect your ability to implement the visions that you've just talked about? We'll start with President Malekzadeh.
Yeah, obviously unanticipated was the depth of the recession that, Chuck inherited, and then it followed through. We all said, well, it's a recession. We have seen 11 recessions since the Great Depression. They all take about 18 months or so, and then we just kind of ride the wave and come out of it. But it really transformed most of the industries, including the healthcare industry. But in our case, our entire higher education industry was transformed. And the game changed significantly from under us. So that was purely unanticipated. And we were always looking for, okay, when are we going to get over this hump and see increasing enrollment when we're looking at the demographics in the Midwest and the Northeast that was fighting against us and all other universities as well. At the same time, on the good side was the will of the faculty, the staff, the administration. Invariably, they all pulled their sleeves up, if you will, and said, we will do what we have to do. And now with COVID-19, I would just mention this anecdote that there were a few faculty members, just a handful, who had told me, we don't want to do online. Online is not for us, or I will retire long before this island really catches on, and so forth. Yet, when Provost Becker announced on the second week of March that we're going to take all classes online, every single faculty member and staff member abided by that. I did not hear a single complaint. We got a complaint about, lack of Wi-Fi, this and that, but it wasn't, no, I'm not willing to do this, because everybody understood that the continuity of the university is at stake. And this is a global pandemic, and we all need to help out.
Thank you. President Middleton, what anticipated and unanticipated internal and external challenges did you face, and how did that affect your ability to implement your vision?
Well, anticipated, I'll remind everybody that I became president about 6 months, or was named president about 6 months after 9/11. And that was an extremely uncertain time for everybody in the country for all sorts of reasons that we don't have time to go into here. So I anticipated that the work that had to be done would be extremely challenging, externally as well as internally, that we had to enhance the aspirations of the community to be more than be what it already was, but to see itself that way. And that it was going to take time to do that. It's fortunate I'm a historian. I think in time, and I am never in a hurry when I know that something is complex and complicated to implement. So I anticipated that, and it proved out that I was pretty clearly correct. I wasn't sure about the details, and I tried to always say I will get the details because the community will develop the details once we are moving together. But we would have to be patient, and that we would have to be flexible as to the methodology in order to be firm about the goals and the purpose, which was very clear to me from the beginning. Unanticipated, like Ted, I came out of the public university experience exclusively. So for me, enrollment was an unanticipated challenge. In the public institutions, you opened the doors and students came. And when I got to Roosevelt, I found out that actually they didn't all show up by May, that you had to work all summer long in order to be able to make your classes in time for the start of the fall semester. So I need to do a quick tutorial on how enrollments worked in private universities generally, and also how they particularly worked at Roosevelt. And I'll be deeply indebted forever for Mary Hendry and to John Allerson, who taught me the ins and outs of that and the implications for our budgets and the aspirations that we might have in terms of the enhancement of quality in the university more generally. So without them, I was sure that I would not have learned it as fast or as effectively as I might have. And so that was the first unanticipated thing. And then Ali's already mentioned the second one, which was the financial crisis of 2008. Which nobody saw coming, and which even today still has implications for what can and cannot be done. And we didn't think it would be as intense, and certainly we didn't think that it would last as long as it did and have such long tentacles out into higher education and to the demographics of higher education and so forth, which just simply didn't match the projections of everything that we were doing prior to that date. That was clearly unanticipated, and on the scale of major events that everybody in the country was having to deal with.
Thank you. Ted, what anticipated and unanticipated internal and external challenges did you face, and how did it affect you?
Well, the greatest single issue for me in 1988, we have to be clear about the time here, 1988. The greatest concern I had was the weak finances of the university. If you come to a university that has a $3 million endowment and the enrollments are static, and the faculty at that time, it seemed to me, in general, and staff, the word that I was going to use was dispirited, or they accepted that as a condition of the university. And it took a great deal of effort on my part, and with the help of people like John Allison, Mary Henry, and so many other, yourself and so many others, we had to face this impoverished university. You can't function that way. So I stressed enrollments, and I particularly stressed fundraising. That became my great passion and contribution, building a board of trustees and raising enough money so we could move ahead and having international programs. We brought in a program from Korea and in Japan, offered MBAs, and trying to enlarge the vision of the entire university. So that was one of the finances were the primary concern that I had when I came in, because I was building on a university that had not really gone ahead as the great secular university in Chicago. In Chicago, there were two Catholic universities, DePaul and Loyola, that were very strong, superb institutions, but there was no single secular university that encompassed both the city and the suburbs. And I had to push it harder and harder to accomplish that vision. So that's basically it. The other issue that occurred early in my presidency, which I won't go into here, we don't have the time and I don't particularly care to go into it, was the auditorium theater. We wanted to build that Schaumburg campus. We had no money with which to build it. We had to borrow money. The auditorium theater in 1988, after two decades of support from the university and struggling, finally hit pay dirt. They got Les Miserables, Miss Saigon, and other hit shows, and they were thriving. And so I went to the auditorium theater and asked to borrow a couple of $1 million. Naturally, was resisted. There was a distinction between the auditorium theater council and the university. And that went on, really, that lawsuit went on back and forth much of my presidency in the background. But it finally got resolved. And now the Auditorium Theater Council is part of the university and enhances the university, makes it into a major performing arts center on Michigan Avenue and Congress Parkway, with that auditorium theater of 4,200 seats, and just a couple of blocks from the Chicago, one of the greatest symphony orchestras in the world. We were able to, this again, with a tremendous help of Earl Shue. I mean, I took the credit, but he did the work. And that was a major achievement, I think, bridging with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. So that's far behind us now, but at the time, at the moment, then, that was a concern. As far as the external world picture, I was lucky. I was very lucky. I came in 1988. I came in with George H. Bush and then with Clinton, and the Clinton years, and from 1992 to 2000 were, basically okay for fundraising. Basically okay. The people were thriving. People were building. For example, we built a real estate program. In a minute, practically, with Jerry Fogelson and Marshall Bennett. I went to them, they came to me, and we built it, and we finally engaged the entire real estate community within the Chicago area, and that's a huge industry, and they all came behind Roosevelt. Now we have an institute in the Business College for the real estate program, and thank God we had Jerry Fogelson and Marshall Bennett who were ready to work their tails off to make that happen. So that was the conditions, the world conditions were actually in my favor. When I stepped down in 2002, I gave Chuck some world conditions that were much less favorable to anybody who would be president at that time. But I was grateful that I was able to raise money as quickly as possible under those conditions.
Thank you, Ted. I'd like to ask now to the presidents, when you reflect on your accomplishments, which one do you think were most profound for the university? And in retrospect, would you have done anything differently? And begin with Ted Gross.
Well, I'll just tick them off. Obviously every president would, wants to tout his own horn. But let me just mention some that I'm most proud of. The first one was the creation of the Albert A. Robin campus, and I still believe that campus, appealing to a middle-class population with all kinds of corporations out there, Abbott Labs and Allstate and Motorola, et cetera, that campus still has tremendous possibilities for the realization of a metropolitan university. So I'm very, very proud of establishing that campus in Schaumburg. And John Allison was the one who carried all the weight on that. He was the one thing he believed in very deeply, and he was able to handle the finances of it and make it work. In addition to that, I would say the creation of the Marshall Bennett Institute for Real Estate wasn't there before I came, is here now, is probably one of the finest in the country, and God bless John DeVries. I was looking for a director, and in walked John DeVries, and God, he was terrific. He just made that happen. And Jerry Fogelson and Marshall Bennett. Marshall Bennett was never a trustee, but he was so generous with his time. And Jerry Fogelson, of course, was an old, good, dear friend who worked very hard to make it work as well. So the Marshall Bennett Institute, then, of course, I'll tick a few things off. The development of a performing arts conservatory, I think, was also something of tremendous pride and possibility. We had concerts every year with Tony Bennett and Itzhak Perlman and so on, and with Earl Shue and others built up a kind of joie de vivre. A joie de vivre in the university. It was coming, it was growing, it was developing. It could be anything it wanted to be. That was the great thing. We were not fated by public funds. We were in control, we thought, and that always is never completely true, but we thought we could create our own destiny. So the Performing Arts program was very, very important too. The Honors Program, the Roosevelt Scholars Program, was established, and Sam Rosenberg did a beautiful job of running that for many, many, many years. And what else? Oh, the Institute for Metropolitan Affairs. I don't know what state it's in now. Rich Krieg was the one who came from city government to head that up initially, but it has a possibility of dealing with all the urban problems that we have, the Institute for Metropolitan Affairs, and I hope that it continues to thrive. So those were a few of the accomplishments that I was particularly pleased at. And as I said before, I had the very good fortune of having a good economy. And most importantly, I had trustees like Jerry Stone and Alan Annixter and Fred Abbey of Amico and others, Jim Mitchell, who came behind the university and gave up an enormous amount of time. And then in time, we got the alumni too, to like Minnie Steinfeld, to endow a hospitality management program. So the alumni started coming back in as well. So those were a few of the accomplishments.
Thank you, Ted. President Ali.
Mention briefly two more recent things we have done. One was the integration of Robert Morris University of Illinois. We were fortunate to find them right across the street, half a block away from us, with amazing faculty, student body, and administration, and partnering with Maybelline Kruger, their president, really became relatively easy after she bought me the first breakfast, and she paid for it. But we developed a very good close relationship, and trust, because you all know that these kind of transaction ultimately comes back to the handshake and the trust between the presidents. And that allowed us to gain a significant number of students. If we were to, organically grow by 1,000 plus students, it would take us a decade to do that. But this opportunity allowed us to do it within a few months after every T was crossed and every I was dotted. And of course, the federal government and the HLC and everybody else approved the transaction. And we're seeing very good results from that today. Again, helping the university academically and financially as well. Academically, as you know, partly because of that integration, now we have a new college of science, health, and pharmacy, which brought in all the health programs, including nursing, that Robert Morris had. The other, I don't want to call it an accomplishment, I would call it a way to showcase the intellectual capital of the faculty, was during the interview I mentioned, is there a major conference that we host on Michigan Avenue, especially using a magnificent auditorium theater on an annual basis, so people know at a certain time of the year they should come to Roosevelt University to hear about the good work of the faculty. And as later on one of the trustees mentioned to me, he said, I thought you were smoking something. Well, and he said that when we had Justice Ginsburg as our guest that evening, when 4,000 people showed up, and the place went just absolutely berserk with her presence and her intellect and what she brought to the university. And, we have done now 5 of these annual events. It takes a whole year of planning, as you can imagine, from Michael Ford, from several faculty leaders all the time, and staff, marketing, administration, everybody that you can imagine. And we're awaiting Justice Sotomayor to join us next September. She was planning to do it this past year, but COVID prevented that. So she will be joining us next year for that program. And the whole idea wasn't to, do marketing as something that is not important and fleeting. The idea was to showcase the intellectual capital of the faculty in the various social justice areas that we have seen. So fortunately, it has caught on, and we're waiting Justice Sotomayor joining us.
Thank you. Chuck.
So I approached this question by asking another one, which is, what did we accomplish that transformed the university from 2002 to 2015 in ways that are visible today and had such a big impact that it could help set the stage for Ali's success going forward. And I developed a list, and I have a number one I'll get to last. But the list is really, for me, a quite remarkable statement about the accomplishments of the faculty and the students and the trustees and everybody that was working at these items over the course of those 13 or so years. For example, we developed new graduate programs, especially in pharmacy and psychology PhD, which is clearly a marker of high quality academic performance. We expanded and created and expanded a robust technology for our employees, but especially for our students. People may not know or remember, but in 2002, our students were using their Hotmail and AOL and their Gmail and their Yahoo accounts as a way for us to communicate with them. They had no access to our computer systems. We built that out, and a sidebar, a happy sidebar, I might add, of that work, thanks to Doug Knurr and Laura Evans, was the creation first of online courses amid much skepticism, and then ultimately online programs. And without that that foundation having been done, Ali, well, today might look a whole lot different. We can leave it at that. In addition, we recruited vigorously nationally for faculty members. I think there was a tendency to recruit locally, really highly talented and able people, but I wanted to recruit from all the major institutions from coast to coast, from Ivy League institutions all the way to the California university system and everything in between. And we recruited a unique kind of faculty members who are now the senior faculty members at the university, many of them, who were not only committed to their own scholarship and their own teaching and their own creative work at a very high level, but who believed passionately in the mission and wanted to be at a place like Roosevelt, just like I did. And that's a very special kind of faculty to recruit, and a very special kind of faculty to have as your colleagues. We also built, of course, the Wabash, as the students called it, or maybe they still do. And I'll say no more about that other than it gave us the capacity to have residential life downtown and to appeal to more 18-year-old traditional age students. But for me, maybe the most important thing was the quality of the instructional space, not just in the lecture halls and so forth, but most especially in the laboratory sciences, which enabled our faculty and students to do this really creative work that would have been challenging, if at all even possible to do in the old facilities in the auditorium building. Of course, the reinstitution of men's athletics and expansion of men's athletics and women's athletics. See me, I've got my Roosevelt Lakers shirt on today. I think that speaks for itself in so many ways. The next to the last one was the recruitment of more women and people of color, both for the board and for the senior administration. I think that it was very important to have the leadership of the university in both of those spheres and spaces to reflect the values and the culture of not only Chicago, but of where the nation is going in the 21st century. But number one for me is something that most people don't even know. And I didn't know it until the enrollment people came and told me about 2010 or 11, maybe 2013. And this is really remarkable, and maybe the most important marker of the success that we had collectively in those 13 years. And it's this, that while I was president, had the privilege of being president, we graduated more people from the university in that period of time than the total number of students graduated from 1945 till the day I assumed office as president in July of 2002. Think about the impact of those wonderful and remarkable alumni. They're out there doing terrific things today, and they will continue to do so. And that is maybe the icing on a pretty big cake with lots of flavors in it, of things that we as a community accomplished while I had the privilege of being the president.
That's great, thank you. I want to turn now to some questions that have been submitted by our audience. And let me start with this one, and we'll start with you, Chuck. What was or has been the most difficult issue you dealt with during your tenure? And on the flip side, what was or has been your favorite part of being president at Roosevelt?
Well, let me do the favorite part first because I really resonate to that. The favorite part was the ability to work with these amazing people. I mean, people that I would never otherwise have got to know had I not been in that position. In the city of Chicago, the political and business and economic leaders who are remarkable. I think Chicago's a terrific place, and I didn't really perceive it as that until I had the ability to go work there. The students, the numbers of students that I know even today and alumni that communicate with me bring joy to my life because it gives context to the work itself. The most difficult challenge was to deal with the budget issues, and as Ted said, to raise enough money to fund these aspirations. People had pretty big aspirations, and they expected me to provide the revenue streams, working with many others, of course, to support that activity, which they so desperately and deservedly needed, that kind of support. So I will just say that I inherited a $29 million endowment from Ted, left Ali about a 90-something million. I just looked the other day and saw that it's 130-something million. And so I think that we're all very much attuned to the difficulty of that work, which goes on behind the scenes, and most people don't see it. But it's challenging work at the best of times, and super challenging during most of the times that we've all served as president.
Thank you. Ted, I wonder if you could tell us the most difficult issue and your favorite part of being president.
Well, that's pretty easy to answer. I echo all of what Chuck has just said. The most difficult issue for me was the conflict with the auditorium theater, because I was a passionate lover of theater, music, or the arts in general. And the difficulty there in the first couple of years, as I was trying to get off the ground, that was something that was difficult to resolve. And the joyous part of it, of course, was taking a university that was basically quiet, doing its job commendably, and reaching out to the entire Chicago community, metropolitan community, and having them see that this city deserves a secular university devoted to the middle class. And that means everybody in the middle class. So that making that message visible and engaging people onto the board of trustees to trust the university, trust the vision, and engaging donors. I mean, I spent a lot of time going from corporate headquarters to corporate headquarters, trying to get people to support this university, that it was vital. I remember so clearly Fred Addy, who served as chairman of the board, taking me to Amoco and standing behind me and raising money from Amoco, which was right down the street from Roosevelt. And he said himself at that point, he said, there's no other university that's serving the students so direct, no secular university that's serving the students so directly as Roosevelt University. We in the business community deserve to support this institution. And I found that again and again and again and again. And to echo again what Chuck said, Chicago was particularly conducive to that. I've never seen a corporate community, a business community so dedicated to its institutions and caring about its institutions. So that was a great pleasure, the fundraising and the meeting of so many interesting people and bringing them to Roosevelt.
Thank you. President Ali.
Yes, the most difficult part has been to make sure that we live within our means in the university, because as the number of students declines, and it continues to decline, you need to also cut the costs. And when you mention that, you're always talking about payroll, and you're talking about people and their families and their expectations of having a good career at Roosevelt University. So that has been probably the most difficult decision. on a day-to-day basis, including this past September that we had to make some very difficult decisions in terms of personnel costs. On the positive side of it, I agree with my colleagues, just getting to know the students every day, hearing about their ambitions, hearing about what they plan to do. And then also the colleagues that we all hire and watch them thrive, watch them grow. Once in a while, I get a good chance of having a cup of coffee, these days virtually, with specific faculty and administrators and staff on a one-on-one basis, and just listen to what they say and how their daily life is. And almost invariably, I am astounded by their dedication to Roosevelt University, to their craft, to their research, to their teaching, and just being a great citizen of the university, an ambassador for the university. So ultimately, it is about the people that we meet at Roosevelt, and there are always more and more good people to meet at Roosevelt University.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more before moving on, and I'm going to ask you this from our viewers. Roosevelt had a singular mission on day one, opening higher education to anyone without regard to race, religion, or social origin. But today that's no longer unique. Most universities claim that mission. So how can we remain a mission-driven institution of higher learning during these financially and socially perilous times? President Ali.
It is a very good question, because that mandate of social justice has been taken up by almost every university. The question of, well, we have smaller classes. Well, if you look at Arizona State University, the largest state university in the nation, they claim they also have small classes, and they throw out averages and so forth. So I think it is incumbent upon us to showcase the intellectual work of our faculty and continue to do that, and the good work they do in the community, because I think that will differentiate us from other universities. And then we recently started, under the leadership of Maybelline Kruger, to update our strategic plan, and it was time to do that. And with faculty, with staff, with students, with trustees especially on board, now they're meeting to make sure that we chart the next 5, 10, 15 years of the university, but do it in a way that everybody believes in it. The foundation is still equity and justice and what we all believe in, and build on that the other pillars that we talked about: academically stronger, financially stronger, and also keep looking for partners such as Robert Morris, so that we leave behind a much stronger university.
Great, thank you. Ted.
Well, I echo everything that Ali has said, and I just think we should do more of the same. I think we should do more of the same. We should go back, constantly remind ourselves, as you are now in this panel, reminding us of the origins of this university, reaching out to the middle class, including minorities, including people of all backgrounds, and just do this better and better and better and better. And that means, I'm afraid it goes back to the basics. It means increasing the enrollments, and it means a long-range fundraising effort to engage the city of Chicago. There is no single university, to my knowledge, secular university, metropolitan university in this community. You have two fine Catholic universities, one perhaps a little bit more Catholic than the other, DePaul and Loyola, but you have no one secular metropolitan university. And, I had visions that initially every president does, and many of them don't ever get realized. But I had visions of connecting the suburban campus and the downtown campus. At one point, we wanted to have a law school, so I spent more hours than I care to remember talking to people like John Marshall, with the courses going back and forth in the suburbs and the city. And I wanted to do so many other things that could connect the suburbs and the city, because that's a kind of unique vision and a unique opportunity for us. But I think more of the same, I really do. I think the university is grounded on the right fundamental principles. And if we can enact those principles and adjust them and adapt them to the current composition of the campus and of the city, we'll be doing a meaningful job for all of us.
Thank you. Chuck.
Real quick, I would say to President Ali, amen, brother, amen. I think that's exactly right. I would add that the strategic planning process will give you the answers to the question Lynn posed. The community will, in that work, tell you how to expand upon the successes of the past. And I'm sure you'll listen to them and lead into that future with hope and high aspirations for continuity and change where you need to change.
I want to thank you, Presidents Malekzadeh, Gross, and Middleton, for your reflections on the university. It's exhausting to hear what you've done over the years, and to thank you for your creativity and commitment and energy. Now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce a video by Eleanor Roosevelt, granddaughter of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. Anne has long been a friend of the university. She served on the advisory board for the Center for New Deal Studies for almost 20 years, and she was a trustee from 2003 to 2015, and she received an honorary doctorate from the university in 1999. Unfortunately, she can't be with us live today, but she graciously recorded a video of her reading the dedication speech that her grandmother gave to the university community on this day 75 years ago. Enjoy.
It is a great pleasure to be here tonight and to dedicate Roosevelt College. I had a most interesting time this afternoon going to the college and seeing education which is being carried on in a really democratic way. A faculty and students working together and equally enthusiastic about democracy in action. I could not help thinking that it would have been a most interesting experience for my husband. He used to say that he would like to start a school, and I think that it would have had some things in common with Roosevelt College, as it was evident that they really loved the things that they were doing. And after all, education is at its best when everyone is so enthusiastic about the work that they're doing that instead of being work, it's pleasure. That was the way you felt, not only the students, but the faculty felt about their work at the college. I like to think that when you live democracy as they are living it there, that you are probably setting a pattern and doing the best kind of teaching because you're showing your city and your state and your nation that actually democracy in education can be a fact. Here, it's working. The very things that people tell you won't work do work. And the people who make them work are enjoying it. One of the boys who introduced me this afternoon was a little nervous, I think, but did a very good job. He had such pride in what his school was doing. And when you get that sense of pride, you know that real democracy is at work. And I think in this country that the best thing we can do today is to show the world that we here can really have in action the ideal that we have talked about and written about and sometimes forgotten, but that we can really have it work. And it can be done by young and old together. Democracy is something which we have always talked a great deal about, but we've always known that we didn't really have a true democracy in all the things that we believed democracy should represent. But we knew that we had an ideal and that when we were ready, we would work to achieve it. Well, nothing made us hurry. But now we have to hurry because the world has changed. The war has changed the whole world. And from now on, we who talked about democracy have got to live it. Because we know that unless we prove by our example to the world that democracy is not just words, then the world will have no proof that democracy is a possibility and that the things that make us live in peace together are possible, not only in the United States, but in the world as a whole. Here in this great city, you have many, many races, many religions. And at Roosevelt College, those religions and those races will meet. They will work together, and it will be an example of what can be achieved by cooperation. I'm tempted sometimes to think that though we have been strong in the military way, and we have to be strong in the economic way, we also have to be strong, I think, in a spiritual way, because we have to lead the world. And we know that we've built up here the strongest production center of the world. We know that we have today the greatest military power in the world, but sometimes I think we're a little appalled at the fact that we have to have the spiritual strength to lead the world, that we have to prove here that the world can live in peace. We are the proving ground. If we can do it, then perhaps the world can do it. And that is something which is going to require education in many, many ways. It's not going to be enough in the future to have people who know how to make war. We're going to have people too who know how to cultivate an atmosphere in the world which leads to peace. Because peace, as we all know, is just as hard to attain as victory in war. Sometimes I wonder if you're going to have the courage and the strength to sustain our effort to win the peace. It takes just as much determination to work for peace as it does to win a war. And now we have before us that long time struggle of teaching our people and teaching the world how we can live together and exemplify the great democratic principles. I was asked a question the other day in a forum in Walter Reed Hospital, and I've talked about it several times since because I can't get it out of my own mind. A wounded boy looked up at me and said, "My wounds are hardly healed. We men fought for what we hoped to find, a better world to live in, but we're seeing nothing but dissension. People quarreling with each other over how they will do this and that. I sometimes wonder, Mrs. Roosevelt, whether it was worth fighting the war." That's a pretty tough question to have a boy ask you. And all that I could think of was, you fought and you won the war so that we and you together might have the opportunity to work to build the better world that you dreamed of as you fought the war. But I think we have to do a little more than just talk about it. If anyone should be afraid, it is of us. They might well be afraid, for we have proved our strength in war. Now, we have to prove that we can work together with all the peoples of the world where they have goodwill, that we can build for peace, that we can educate our young people, and can prepare to help the rest of the world and do it without fear. Do it with goodwill, that our own strength and our own example can give the rest of the world the hope that will lead us all to peace.
Eleanor Roosevelt told the audience that, quote, Eleanor Roosevelt is everyone's grandmother, and she is watching all of us, end quote. I believe she is still watching and would be very pleased with the progress of not only Roosevelt University, but our country. When Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won the 2020 election, it marked a new beginning for us as a country and an opportunity for Roosevelt community to continue to create positive change in our society. Chuck, Ted, it is an honor to share the virtual stage with you today. I'm grateful for the groundwork that you laid, which has allowed all of us to carry the torch forward for the university. It's evident that the values we carry and our work to lead this great university has made a mark in higher education and in our community. So thank you for being with us. Lynn, thank you so much for guiding this conversation. You have always been a true friend and the go-to person about the history of the university. And Pat, thank you so much for leading the board of trustees. Once you became the chair of the board, I knew that we could work together extremely well to push the university forward. Well, a special thank you to Reverend Jesse Jackson for his continued support of Roosevelt. Lastly, thank you to the alumni, faculty, staff, parents, and friends of the university who joined us today in this celebration. We hope to see you at another event this week. Now, in closing, I hope that you will join us on Giving Tuesday, December 1st, as the Roosevelt community comes together to support student success. In honor of our 75th year milestone, we are striving to raise $75,000 for student scholarships. So with that, we leave you with this video.